As I said last time, I believe the Bible is a flat earth book, which of course is denied by most Christians. But then you would be surprised at how few Christians look at the Old Testament. Genesis is the foundation, and a deeper delve is necessary, I think, to understand the context of biblical cosmology and what scriptures implies flat earth. In the last video we went through how Jesus was at the centre of creation, how he was the Word and that the Word became flesh and dwelt among men, and that all things are held together by him. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. For by him were all things created, that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. I also gave you an introduction to gematria, which in my mind, and hopefully yours, proves God's hand in these scriptures, being God-breathed. Please check out the last video because it is a process of joining the dots together. So now let's look into some more detail. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Taking the Hebrew words, Bereshit means in beginning, Elohim means gods, it is a plural noun, Ber means created out of nothing, Shemahim means heavens and is also a plural word, Eretz means land but not as in the earth. So Elohim is a plural word, and you will be familiar with other plural words which end in im, cherub, cherubim, seraph, seraphim, kibbutz, kibbutzim. Other verses confirming Jesus at creation. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that are moving along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Now, from Strong's, our is the Hebrew word anatnu, and is translated as we, ourselves, or us. So here we have, let us, our image, our likeness, and our image in verse 27. And God is also mentioned 3 times in these 2 verses, all using the plural Elohim. Now, the question is, if God is alone, to whom is he talking to? Not an angel. They are all created beings. So God the Father must be talking to Jesus, as confirmed in New Testament writings. Oh, and if you were to say that Jesus never claimed to be God, well, you are wrong. That is precisely what he was crucified for claiming. Check out my videos on my testimony and the Easter story. But Jesus held his peace, and the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God that thou tellest whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus saith unto him, Thou hast said, Nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, ye have heard his blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. The reference is in Daniel. They knew exactly what he was saying. So now let's conclude this part by mentioning verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And here we have the Spirit of God. So within the first 2 verses of Genesis chapter 1, we have Elohim, Father and Son, and Spirit. Son is not created but comes forth, i.e. our word begotten. So here are the 3 persons of God in the first 2 verses of the Bible. If you find this difficult, just think of this. Then God said, Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. We are made in the image of God. So we have a body, physical here on earth, a soul, our very being, emotion, etc. What makes me me and is eternal, a spirit, communication with outside this physical realm, and our communication with God. We are made three in one person, but three in essence. So now let's continue with more insight into verse 2. But first, let me ask you to consider this and what God said after Noah's flood, remembering that it was worldwide, that is to say, it covered the whole earth. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. Now, my suggestion is this, and again, it's about context, and I shall explain. You see, because of how God says never again, suggests to me that it may not have been the very first time. This is backed up by saying in verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Clearly, the earth was covered by water, suggesting a previous catastrophic worldwide flood. And this again is further backed up by stating the earth was without form and empty. Now, you don't create something without form. Building or making anything you create from the start has form and build into the final shape. My hobby is model making, and even from gluing or soldering the first two bits together, you have created shape. Consider building a house. Start with a hole in the ground, but the hole is for pipes, for drainage, for cable and for foundations, usually from a plan. Even at this stage there is some idea of shape, even if it's only the ground plan. Then the bricks, timber, windows, doors and roof. At each stage there is shape towards the final building. At no stage can it be described as without form and void. But what can describe in such a manner is destruction and demolition of such a building, just a pile of rubble. So I've always thought that we see at the beginning of verse 2 a destroyed and flooded earth ready for recreation, which is where our history begins. Remnants of previous civilizations prior to our history beginning just over 6,000 years ago would have been flooded and destroyed by earthquakes when the land reappeared after the previous flood, and again after Noah's flood when perhaps lands were separated. This is another rabbit hole, but puts into perspective a lot of questions about how old the earth might be, i.e. greater than 6,000 years. Finally, a teaser for later. More flat earth references in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. The face of the deep and the face of the waters. May I remind you that a sphere does not have a face. A circle has a face. A sphere, in mathematical terms, does not have any faces. Faces are typically defined as flat, two-dimensional surfaces of a three-dimensional object. Since a sphere is a perfectly round, three-dimensional object with a continuous curved surface, it lacks any flat surfaces to be considered faces. A sphere has a single curved surface, but this is not a face in the standard geometric definition. In geometry, a circle is considered to have one face, which is the entire two-dimensional area enclosed by the circle's curved boundary. This face is flat and has no edges or vertices. While a sphere, a three-dimensional object, has no flat faces, a circle, being a two-dimensional shape, is defined by its face. So a circle has boundaries and a sphere doesn't. So the earth cannot be a sphere if we are talking about the face of the earth, nor can it be a sphere if we are talking about the ends of the earth. Simples! And all this should really give you something to think about.